unless you're a survivor of emotional abuse, you have no idea what it's like to have conversations with a person that you're no longer in contact with. So today we're going to talk about why it's so hard to move on. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Goddard from Revive Your Soul. Why can't I move on? Why is it so difficult to move on? You might see your partner in a new relationship. Unless you have children and you've got to make contact with them, or you've got to talk to them or have some form of conversation with them, the first thing you need to do is to block all social media. I think it's H.G. Tudor talks about the degrees of consciousness within the emotional abuser, within the narcissist, and he describes it when you might come into their sphere of acknowledgement, so that there might be something that reminds them of you, and they might then go looking on your profile on Facebook, or they might look at an Instagram account, so all the social media accounts. So you need to make sure that they're blocked, and it stops you having any contact with them. No contact is breaking all ties, not talking to them in any way. And I appreciate that is really difficult. It's something that I've had to deal with years ago. Having children and having to communicate and trying to find, maybe through mediation or the help of other people, to ways of communicating, ways of setting up access for children. And there is that fear there that you don't know what's being said to that child. So if you're worried about the emotional damage that the abuser will then do to your children, see if there's a way that they can be chaperoned for a period of time. Why is it so hard for you to move on? Why can't you let go? Though being in no contact with a person is going to help calm your body down. When people come out of these types of relationships, they experience something very similar to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I say very similar because I can't diagnose that. But if you look up the symptoms, you come out on hyper alert, you're looking over your shoulder all the time. By having no contact, by giving yourself a breathing space, you were able to calm the body down. There's some interesting research that's been done, and my interest has always been in the role that the hormone oxytocin plays in our bodies. That's like a double-edged sword. In fact, it might be two double-edged swords, because there's two elements to this. What you've been through, whether it's months, weeks, years, is a constant. It's like being in a war zone, basically. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder is being constantly put in stressful situations, whereas post-traumatic is about one incident. And I heard the description, which I thought worked really well, of if you're driving along in your car and somebody pulls out in front of you or cuts you up, you might feel your heart rate exceed and your stress hormones are released. Now, in a normal situation, your body and your eyes are scanning the situation for danger. Your brain has assessed that you're out of danger now. The car's moved away. You've managed to stop, and your body goes back down into its natural state, and it stays there. So that is how we deal with in stressful situations. Post-traumatic stress is when you are in a situation and the cortisol and all your stress hormones are alerted, and they go on alert and they don't come back down. And then complex post-traumatic stress disorder is when this is constant. It's constantly going on. It doesn't stop. So in a war zone, you might walk away from a situation and there's trauma and triggers that have happened. Whereas in the case of complex, this is happening all the time. You might go to work for a few hours, but you're coming back to that situation. You might go off to visit somebody, but you're coming back to that situation. It's always there, and you don't get a break from it. So this going in no contact is your break. It's allowing your body to calm down. It's allowing yourself to reduce some of those stress hormones and try and get back to your body's natural state. And this can take a long time. So why can't you get over this? Why can't you let go? Why can't you stop thinking about them? Why is it so hard to move on? So at the very beginning of the relationship, during this love bombing stage, so you've got the love bombing, you've got the which is the idealization stage, you've got the devaluation stage, and you've got the discard. Now, don't be confused with the discard, because the discard is a hooking stage. It's one to make you more attached to the relationship. It's the final discard. That's the one where you've either walked away because you've understood what's going on, or you can't deal with anymore, or they've discarded you, finally discarded you. They found someone to replace you, or they found a source of supply, which is attention, which is all they're looking for in relationships. Somebody to feed them attention, them to be the center of somebody's world, to validate them and make them feel important. And this is what it's all about. This is what it's always been about. This relationship was about them having a massive wound themselves, and them not feeling of being very insecure people, and this will have gone on from childhood. When I first started working, when I first started coaching people in this area, I was asking, what was the relationship between your partner and their father? Because it's a lot of women that I work with, the relationship between the father and the son, and it wasn't a great thing. And these young boys were aspiring or trying to impress someone. It was similar. It was the same with the mother, but there was an insecurity that they weren't good enough, they weren't manly enough, or they weren't something enough, they weren't enough, or they didn't feel enough. But there was other traumas there. But I found that was really interesting when I first started working this area a few years ago. But they've projected that. This projection is on you, and they make you not good enough. They make you not worthy enough. So all these questions when you come out of this relationship, one is not understanding what happened to you. Two is, believing everything they've told you. Most of your relationship has been a lie. So, but we still get caught up in this lie that there's something wrong with us. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I don't have my faults. I was disempowered on so many levels, and I didn't warrant that. It was something that I said a few weeks ago in one of my videos, and I'll try and pin that. And that was, this relationship was a lie. Most of this relationship was a lie. And yet, the one thing we hang on to is our low self-esteem. We believe that we're not good enough. And that comes from somewhere. We might have been told it. We might have been abandoned. We might have a shame wound. We might have a guilt wound. And the abandonment, shame and guilt are the three core wounds that we need to heal. And this person has come in and they've been able to highlight that. Moving on from a relationship is hard because of this. There's so many different things. You're addicted to the relationship. You're addicted to the person because they might have validated you in some way that nobody else has. You might believe that they understood you in the way that nobody else has. And what they're very good at doing is making mental notes of who you are, what you like, and they mirror back this person. So in a way, you're falling in love with yourself because all your hopes and dreams and everything that you spoke about, everything you were looking for in a relationship is mirrored back to you. And they take all the good qualities and they take them on as their own, and then they mirror them back. So just hold that thought that you might have been on some level falling in love with yourself. And this is what we really need to do. But moving on from this relationship, and it being so hard, is being trapped. There are so many chemicals that are released, and one of those, and this is my I'm really interested in the oxytocin that's released now. Because we all are a bunch of chemicals. If you go back to school when you're doing your chemistry and you put two things together and you watch things change colour or bubble up or explode, those reactions are happening in our bodies, and you only have to walk into a room and everybody's feeling really low and you're in a really good mood and they can drag you down. Or the other way, you know, everyone's in a really good mood and you walk into a room and you're feeling a bit low and they lift you up. We have these chemical reactions within our bodies. So oxytocin is a hormone that's released. It's a bonding hormone. It's connecting two people. It's forming a bond of trust. It's why people use team building exercises, because when we're together, we've got something in common, we bond and we form a trust. And this is what's been happening in the relationship. Only it was only one-sided. And you were forming this trust, you were trusting this person, you were releasing oxytocin. It's also released when you have an orgasm, when you have sex, when you, it's called the cuddle hormone, and it's also called, I think it's the love hormone as well, because it's released in these times when we are intimate with people and we are trusting people. The other side of the sword on oxytocin is actually, it's there when we go through emotionally traumatic experiences. It ingrains the memory and it also ingrains the emotion around that trauma. People that have experienced these types of relationships are likely to go back into a similar relationship and be triggered even further, because there's a memory connection, that emotion. And also, if you've experienced any form of abandonment, any form of shaming and any form of guilt while you're growing up, whether that's at school or in your home environment. And this isn't about bashing people's childhoods and saying, you know, what an awful childhood I had. You know, a lot of people I work with say, I had a really good childhood. I don't see anything. But we can find at least one event that is the trigger where they feel or they felt not being good enough, not worthy of something, or abandoned in some way, whether it's when a sibling was born or whether other events that happens. But there is usually a wound around certain ages. And if we are growing up in environments, or we've grown up in environments that weren't healthy, weren't emotionally healthy, we're being taught at a really young age what to put up with. There might have been an experience at school, or there might have been, you know, where you've been humiliated or you've been abandoned in some way, and that might be your wound. These chemical reactions that we're within our bodies. So if you've experienced trauma, emotional trauma during your relationship, the oxytocin levels are ingrained on these memories, and this is why people get flashbacks, and this is why in certain situations they might recall things and it gives them heart palpitations, or they might go lightheaded, or they might feel panicky or have anxiety attacks because they've experienced something very similar before. So the question was, why does it hurt so much? And it's to do with the bonding that took place. You believed everything you were told, and now this is your chance to grieve. You need to be grieving not just the person that you're now not in a relationship with. It might be that you're grieving the fake future that you had together. I need to grieve the relationship, and the relationship that somebody understood you on a level that you feel you've never been understood before or never been loved before. And you might be experiencing things like hoovering, so where they reach out to you, they make contact with you, they miss you, and they're making you feel that, you know, they want you, they actually do want you back. And the hoovering happens in the third cycle of the discard. So the discard isn't always the final discard. So it might be that they don't show up for something, they don't phone when they're going to phone, they might disappear for days or weeks on end. And they say they're going to be in contact with you and you never hear from them, and then they reappear again. And this cycle is to hook you in. And I use the analogy of a fisherman. So if you've ever been line fishing, you put your bait and you get your fish is hooked on the end. But a fisherman will never pull the line straight in. Now, do it very gently. They're not looking to land the fish straight away. It's all a very gentle process. They want to make sure the hook is fully embedded in the mouth before, because they can't can't risk it getting away. And this is the part of the devaluation. And if during that time you might make comments or pick up on something that's really, you know, they might tell you you're being really sensitive or you've misunderstood what they were saying, and they know they haven't quite got the settings right on their program, and they need to do a little bit more love bombing. So followed by a discard will be a love bombing stage, followed by devaluation, and it just goes round and round and round. It can go round and round for years until somebody bails. You have to want to get out of that type of relationship. I was asked this question before: how do you help people get out of these relationships? People don't know they're in them, and it's very painful. They have no idea, they're completely lost. And it's only at the point that they can't put up with the behaviour anymore, or something happens, maybe this is the last infidelity that they've been told about, and they just can't go on any longer. Something just clicks and they have to get out. Up until that point, people don't know they're in the relationship, and they just continue and they go round and round and round. It's not until it gets really uncomfortable that they have to get out, or they're discarded, and they have to deal with what's been happening. And some people don't go looking; they just go bury themselves down and into depression. Other people just jump back into relationships because they feel so insecure and unworthy. They're trying to validate themselves in another relationship. And I've seen that a few times. And even in a forum, a woman was saying how happy she was because she was still in love with her husband, but she was now living with somebody else and had been for a few years. It's about really doing this inner healing, understanding where these wounds come from. You are addicted to this love drug. You're addicted to the bonding that happened and this love that you feel, or maybe you've never experienced before. But it's short-lived and it comes back round. You get devalued again, and you end back up on this wheel. And you know, it's a bit like a bicycle wheel with all the different spokes. So each person, it's the same cycle. Everybody does the same cycle. It's as if they have a book, you know, a manual, how to emotionally abuse your partner. It's as if they have this book, but they have their individual ways of doing it. So some people be really good at gaslighting. Some people will be really good, you know, their preferred method is. And there's so many different ways. And that's probably one of the reasons, I think, is one of the reasons why I started writing my book, The A to Z of Emotional Abuse. So people understand that there are so many different tools that they've got and they use. They're individuals, but they use this same pattern. It's like they've got this template, but each individual person has their own technique. It hurts so much because of the bonding that's happened, and you don't understand how you're going to live without them. You don't understand how you can function. They put themselves into this place of power and control. They wanted control of your life. That's why they wrecked your relationships with friends and family, that they couldn't risk being caught out by other people. They made up stories about them. You know, they devalued them so that you wouldn't turn to them. They've changed you to this relationship and they've walked away, and you don't know how to get out. It's about undoing what's been done, little steps, and seeing, at some point you're going to see how far you've come, finding yourself and gifting yourself and loving yourself, because as I said earlier, this is about, you fell in love on some level with yourself during this relationship. They were mirroring part of you back to you. So this is about understanding who you are and really loving yourself on every level. It is really hard to move on from these relationships, to stop thinking about them, to from them not being the waking, you know, the person you wake up with thinking about. And again, if you receive text messages or messages in the morning, if you woke up to them, these are part of the ploy, because you wake up thinking, oh, how amazing. I've never, you know, had someone be thinking about, on waking, they're thinking about me. From the other side, they know that's what you're going to be thinking, and that's why they do it. This is a game. It was a game to them. just to see how far they can go, how far they can push you before you broke. And when you were no longer any use to them, whether it was you've run out of energy, run out of money, you've run out of social status, you've run out of whatever it was they needed you for, then they move on. And I remember I've just seen, I think it was this morning, I saw a post that said there's nothing to get a narcissist into a new relationship than being homeless. And this is what it's about. It's about them fulfilling their needs and having all of their needs met, but never ever reciprocating it back, never giving back. I know how hard it is for you. And now this is your time to love yourself. I'm sending you loads and loads of love for now.